Good afternoon, fellow Zimbabweans. I am Blessed GEZA, Comrade Bombshell. Let's meet tonight in 2030 when I'll be addressing General CHIWENGA. Murie Zimbabwe, ndini wenyu Blessed GEZA, Comrade Bombshell. Ngatisangane manheru anhasi na 2030 apo patenge tichizotaura nezva General CHIWENGA.
How's the political temperature in Zimbabwe?
Quite tense. I would like to believe quite tense. And the people are generally agitated because there is a lot of looting, a lot of corruption going around. And this corruption has actually become so pervasive. It's everywhere. It affects everyone to an extent that you have a sad situation where victims of a road traffic accident don't have basic things like plaster, like bandages. We have a situation where our hospitals are using cardboard boxes, as bandages, cardboard boxes and sellotape. It's that dire. We have a situation where almost everything is not functioning. And this is purely because of the corruption that is going on around the president. Because we are now favored with the exposition that Comrade GEZA did, that the president is suffering from some mental affliction called vascular dementia. He forgets. So those people that are around him, including his family, his wife, his children, and his business associates, have taken advantage of his mental condition to get into deals, to get into corrupt deals using his name and his signature. To some extent, moving military personnel from one department to the other, to some extent firing ministers in his stead. So what we have now is that executive powers are being exercised by surrogates. So we have surrogate president making surrogate presidential and executive decisions to move personnel in the army, to fire ministers and appoint ministers, and to do dirty deals within the economy. We have an unfortunate situation where people around the president, about 6 people now are being investigated by the Zimbabwe police. Kudakwasheta Gwirei, Simbarache Chinyemba, Varaidzo Zifudzi, the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Finance, George Guamatanga, the former Reserve Bank governor, who is now CEO, who is now board chair of an investment house called Mutapa Investment, John Panonetsa Mangujiga. They are being investigated. Those people are being investigated for corruption involving 1.9 billion United States dollars. And this is emanating from the sale of 35% shares in a company, in a mining house called Kuvimba Mining House. And this Kuvimba Mining House is owned by Tagwirei and partly by the president of the Republic of Zimbabwe through a trust, his family trust called Eagles Trust. So the president, we have an unfortunate situation where the criminals are no longer around the president, but the president is part of the criminals. And these criminals have been wreaking havoc in the financial market. They are looting state-owned enterprises. So that's the unfortunate situation that we have in Zimbabwe. And unlike your previous report in Bedbridge that Zimbabweans are running away from the effects of sanctions, the biggest sanction in Zimbabwe is the president of the country who has allowed rampant looting, the president of the country who has allowed those around him, his family, his children, his business associates, to exercise executive powers and make executive decisions.
There were negotiations going on all the day.
I remember that. It lasted hours and hours.
And the feedback was saying, Msholozi will be handing himself over at 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Wow.
And Zondo has said, if Zuma doesn't come in, Minister of Justice and Minister of Police are going in prison. Yeah, yes, that's so. It is
Yeah,
judgment.
yeah.
So I was not going to go to prison.
Oh, of course, because you would have been in contempt.
Yes.
Yeah, sure,
yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
Wow.
The judge has said so.
And you had to do it by what, midnight that
Yeah,
night?
by midnight. So there is this general that we have sent negotiating and everybody. We sent one closest cousin of Jay-Z's to go and speak to him. The guy came back at about 6. He said, no, at 6 he's leaving. 7. I phoned this guy. Guy who said this guy is going. He said, no, he told me by the time I left, he was packing and going and all that.
Yeah.
There was a unit, Silva, that was standby, that at 11:30, that unit had to move and fetch him.
Actually go in.
Yeah. That was going to be the most painful moment to do it that way rather than him
imagine?
Going. So the Ndandla, at about 9, we began to say, can you get ready? Can you get ready? And all that. Fortunately, at about between 9, 10, 11, we were told that he's in the cars, they're driving, could see them hung. Said, God is great.
Absolutely. I think the country was saved that
I don't
that
pray every day.
night. But yeah. Wow.
A large part of Zimbabwe's hemorrhage and leakage is also actually coming now through treasury, through central government. We know from the audited statements of the Auditor General that 2.7 billion US dollars was stolen and lost directly through treasury in 2017. 3.5 billion US dollars was lost directly through treasury in 2018. And the recently released audit report of 2019 shows a loss of 7.6 billion US dollars lost through treasury. So in 3 years, over and above the budget deficit, around 14 billion US dollars has been lost through the Ministry of Finance. And this is concerning because the Ministry of Finance traditionally is an oversight ministry. It is a gatekeeper. So it beholds the mind when the gatekeeper becomes the principal gate crusher. And I need to say that beyond this 14 billion US dollars, Parliament right now has pending before it, a financial adjustment bill in respect of which the executive, the government of the day, is seeking condonation of the sum of 10.6 billion US dollars. That was again lost through treasury between 2015 and 2017. So between 2015 and 2019, Zimbabwe has lost 10.6 billion US dollars accounted for by the financial adjustment bill, then 14 billion US dollars in the form of $2.7 billion lost in 2017, $3.5 billion lost in 2018, and $7.6 billion lost in 2019. There is more in 2020. There is more in 2019. Gold alone, US $1.5 billion worth of gold is being smuggled annually from Zimbabwe, which translates to between 40 to 50 tons of gold that is being shipped out of Zimbabwe illegally. The major destination is South Africa. The major destination is Dubai. Diamonds, millions and millions of carats are being shipped out of Zimbabwe, even after the low levels of production that are taking place at Marange. Between 2009 and 2014, Zimbabwe lost 15 billion US dollars worth of diamonds illegally, a figure which was also confirmed by the late President Robert Mugabe. In our estimation, the figure is much, much bigger than $15 billion. We are losing around US $1 billion through cigarette smuggling done by a cartel, which I'll mention later on. So we are essentially losing around $3 billion worth of resources through corruption in resources. And this excludes what we are losing in the form of illicit financial flows, IFFs. And since the coup of November 2017, corruption has become so entrenched and so deep-rooted. And the challenge with this corruption is that it affects every length and breadth of Zimbabwe. It affects every sphere of Zimbabwean life. It has become a huge threat to people's livelihoods. It has become a huge threat to the existence of Zimbabwe itself as a nation state. It has become a huge threat to the prospects of a sustainable economic recovery. It is putting a premium on Zimbabwe as a country. It is putting a premium on our capacity to develop, and it is putting a premium on our human social indices.